Okay, this part is B2a. This is all about classification. Now, scientists all over the world classify living organisms so that they can easily name the different organisms and also to put them into different groups. This is because the world is full of millions of different types of living organisms, and it makes them easier to study. In order to classify living things, biologists observe their features or their characteristics. You can observe both similarities and differences in different organisms. Living things that share lots of similar characteristics are grouped together, and if organisms have lots of differences in their characteristics, they are classified into different groups. Now, the one thing that you need to know is that there are 5 main groups called kingdoms. You've got plants, animals, fungi, protoctista and prokaryotes. If I just run through some of the characteristics of these first of all. Plants made of many cells. The cell walls are made of cellulose. The cells contain chloroplasts. They used light to make food by photosynthesis, and they grow in a spreading manner. Animals made of many cells again, but this time no chloroplasts. They are unable to make their own food, so they feed on other organisms, and they have to get the energy from plants, which is why plants are called producers and animals are consumers. They have a compact body shape. Most are capable of moving around. If you look at the fungi, their cell walls are made of something called chitin, chitin. They reproduce by forming spores, and they do not photosynthesize, which is why fungi, mushrooms for instance, don't fit into the plant kingdom. Protoctists, they are single-celled generally. Organisms, for instance, an amoeba is a single-celled organism that can live all by itself and carry out all the life processes. And then the last group, the prokaryotes, they do not have a true nucleus, and we generally say that bacteria are the main prokaryotes. Okay, so if you look further at the animal kingdom, it's split into 2 groups: the vertebrates, meaning it's got a backbone, and the invertebrates, which means that there's no backbone. Also, you've got an example there, that word there, arthropods. Arthropods basically means segmented bodies with jointed legs. And if you looked at the invertebrate groups, there are several of them. You've got the annelids, for example, the earthworms. You've got your arthropods, your insects, your mollusks, such as your slugs and snails, and your cnidarians, which is your jellyfish. If you look then at the vertebrate groups are split into 5. You've got your fish, your birds, your mammals, your reptiles, your amphibians. If you're asked to give a couple of characteristics of vertebrate groups, then fish have got gills and scales. Birds have wings and feathers. Mammals have hair covering their body, and they give birth to live young and feed from mammary glands. The ones that students struggle with is amphibians and reptiles, and I always try to think of amphibians are moist and smooth, and reptiles are dry and scaly. So, if we look more closely at the arthropods, you can see they are split into different groups. Now, this is really important here. Scientists actually look at the whole kingdom, so for instance the 5 that we've just looked at, and then they break it down into the phylum, and then into the class and the order, family, genus, until you get down to species. If you are asked to give a definition of species, this is organisms that have similar characteristics that can produce fertile offspring, and that's really important. If you, for instance, had a horse and a donkey produced a mule which is a hybrid, and this would not be fertile. Okay, so it's difficult to classify organisms because changes take place on a continuous spectrum. Some organisms have unusual characteristics, like the platypus, for instance, is very difficult to classify. Okay, we look at classification because it shows evolutionary relationships and ecological relationships, and how organisms have evolved over several thousands of years. And the horses, if you looked at the fossil record for horses, for instance, it's very easy to see how that has changed over time. Classification is either natural, based on evolution, or artificial, which is based on characteristics. But generally nowadays, because of technology, we can start to look at DNA and get a much closer sequence to see if it's a true species. So species that are similar are likely to live in similar habitats as they are well equipped to do so, and that would be their ecological niche. So a species is a group of animals with similar characteristics that can breed with one another, and don't forget the important thing, they produce fertile offspring.